Welcome to Naturally Free in Finance. My name is Chanel, and if you're new to the channel, what I do is I like to work on my natural hair and then talk about something finance related. So in this video, I'm actually going to talk about Bernie Madoff's DocuSeries that's on Netflix right now. It's a 4-part series, and if you're not familiar with the story, which I think a lot of people are, so he owned his own investment firm. He essentially was running a Ponzi scheme. He stole over $65 billion from people, and he was ultimately sentenced in 2009, was sentenced to 150 years, ended up dying in 2021. So I say that because I think that is pretty well known, but it was really interesting to watch the docuseries to learn more of the details. So that's kind of the gist of what I want to talk about today in this video. And in the meantime, I already started parting my hair to detangle it. I wore it in a puff last week. The majority of the week I wore it in a puff, so I'm detangling it now, and then I think I'm going to put it in a low bun, and I'm probably going to use, when I put it in a low bun, this strong hold styling gel by Shea Moisture. I've never used this. I think I mentioned in a last video that this was a new purchase for me, and if you watch my previous video, I talk about how I'm not buying any products and I'm going to use what I have. So that's what I'm doing right now. So to kind of get into it, so to kind of give a backstory of Bernie Madoff, because the docuseries, and I would probably give a disclaimer, if you do want to watch the series, I would say watch that first before watching this video, because I don't want to give away anything. But it's a short series, so you can probably watch the whole thing in about 2 days. I actually ended up watching the first 2 episodes twice, because once I finished, I was just kind of like, I don't understand how some of these people who worked there for so long can tell me that they didn't know what was going on. So I had to go back and see what happened as to how it was possible that they didn't know. So that's that. So kind of get into it. God, I can't talk. So Bernie Madoff is from Queens, New York. He was from a suburban area of Queens. His dad was, I would say, I guess, kind of like a serial business owner. He would start different businesses, and a lot of them would fail. So essentially, his mom, who originally was a homemaker, she ended up having to work as well because they were struggling to, keep their home in this suburban area. And so learning that, it helped me to understand, kind of where this greed mindset came from with Bernie. At the end of the day, he wanted to make a lot of money and be rich, and it just got to the point with him of where the greed it kicked into full gear. And just knowing, I, like most of us, I knew the story, but I didn't know the severity of how long this was going on. This Ponzi scheme was going on for 40 years. 40 years. I'll be 40 in a few years. So just craziness. One of the things that I really liked about the series is that they did keep it short, and they tell you kind of his backstory and then how it all came about. So to briefly get through the 4 hours, I would say that, so essentially Bernie Madoff, he had a legitimate investment business, an investment firm business. He was able to start this business from the help of his father-in-law. His father-in-law was an accountant. He started working for him, and his father-in-law had access to very wealthy individuals. And so his father-in-law actually helped him start his trading business. So his father-in-law pulled the money of investors, of people that he knew, and all that money that was pulled together initially helped Bernie Madoff start his trading company. So like in the late 60s, early 70s, I want to say it was early 70s, is when he started a trading firm where they were trading on the stock market, and this was a legit business. It was registered with the SEC and everything. But both Bernie and honestly his father-in-law too, they eventually, well, I'm not going to say the father-in-law, but Bernie ended up creating a investment advisory firm as well that was not registered with the SEC. So he had this legitimate trading firm, and then he also had a investment advisory firm. So basically he would advise people, you know, on what to do with their money, on what investments they should make and everything. And so he was able to start this from the help of his father-in-law. So I guess I'll just kind of get into, you know, why didn't he get caught? And why did it take so long? So even way back in like early 1990, I think it was like 1992, to make a long story short, when he created, once his father-in-law retired, his father-in-law brought on these two accountants. The accountants basically started to help Bernie find more high quality, you know, very rich investors to pull their money and to have them work with Bernie in regards to the advisory firm business that was not registered, that was not legal, and all of these things. So once that happened, they were essentially trying to figure out ways to get more and more clients. And so they created a brochure. And that was one of the main things that they were not supposed to do, was to have anything in writing or anything in paper making it known about this illegal advisory firm that they had created. So somehow, some way, the SEC found out about the advisory firm because of the brochure that these accountants made. And they came in, did an audit, and said that they were good. Like, they didn't find any illegal activity. Although the brochure mentioned that the investment advisory firm can guarantee 100% no risk, and they were like, you know, how is it possible that you can tell someone that something is 100% not risky? And somehow the SEC just blew over this, and they were able to get out of potentially having a lawsuit or being shut down. If I recall, they had got to the point with the advisory firm that they had like $440 million that was put into this advisory firm, or that was earned. And so they had to, at this point in time, they did have to give all of that money back to those clients. So you would think that after that debacle that Bernie Madoff would like chill out and not continue to do these illegal things, but he didn't stop doing it. He didn't stop having this illegitimate advisory firm. So as time goes on, his sons come on board on his legitimate trading firm. So again, the trading business is where they are trading stocks on the stock market. They are registered. It is a legit business. It's not illegal. And this is the business that his sons were eventually the head of. And so when I mention about having to go back, because at the end of the story, the sons eventually get to the point where they don't want anything to do with Bernie once he goes to jail. And I'm like, why not? You guys knew what's going on, but apparently they didn't. So in the documentary, it talks about how the sons were never allowed to go to this different floor where the illegal advisory firm was being held. They were only allowed on the trading floor. And so they didn't know. And then of course Bernie was this person that kept things very secretive, and they mentioned a lot about how he was extremely charismatic and just people loved him and trusted him. And I think, ultimately that's why he was able to bring so many big clients on to his firm. So over the course of decades, he is able to just swindle people with his smarts. I mean, and mind you, and that's another big thing too about the whole docuseries, because I'm like, why did people trust him so much? Why did they like believe in his particular firm to want to come on board to it? And I didn't know that Bernie Madoff was like a chairman on NASDAQ. He was on boards. He was really viewed as a key source in the Security and Exchange Commission, the SEC. He was a smart man. He was really someone that was like admired and is seen as like a go-to person for the stock market. And so learning that helps me to better understand a little bit about why these people, his clients, the people that came on to invest with him, why they chose to do it with him, because they thought that he was a trusted figure, and he was a very well-known person in the financial industry. So that part I get. But as you watch the series and they talk about how they never had any losses. So I know even for me, as I was watching the series, I had to pause it. I literally had to pause it, I think on like the third episode, and I'm like, oh my god, like let me make sure that my 401k is like in a legitimate place, which it is. My 401k is with Fidelity, and I had been complaining for a while about how how I've lost a lot of money in my 401k because of this inflation and stock prices constantly going down. But I'm with Fidelity, which is backed by the SEC. It's registered and everything. So I'm good. But I literally paused it and I'm like, let me check my statement and my account and make sure that everything is good. And that was something that his clients obviously did not do. Although it's so crazy because you're talking about people who have billion dollar net worths and just very smart people, but yet they miss these really small details. Well, not small, but they miss the details of wasn't allowed to get their statements online. Like, I understand initially when the investment firm was started, like in the 70s, 60s, 70s. She actually started in the 60s. So obviously there was no computers then. But early 2000s, you're still not getting a statement for your brokerage account. Like, come on, that doesn't make any sense. And then the statements that they were providing, they mentioned that they were on like that old school, like 80s paper that you like rip off the sides, and there's no number on the statements for customer service. The ink was smearing, like very ghetto and unprofessional and a super red flag. And these are like billionaires who are accepting this. So thinking about that, it helps me to understand that I feel absolutely terrible for these people losing this amount of money. I mean, majority of the people are like in their 70s and 80s, had invested all of their money into Bernie's firm and lost it all. And it's very sad, but at the same time, you just have to sometimes take a step back and ask yourself, like, does this make sense? Is this legit? Like, yeah, okay, you were making a lot of money, but we know that the stock market goes up and down. Prices of stocks go up and down. So if you're constantly seeing these huge returns, like they were saying that they were getting, 15% returns where the average return would be like 9%. So how is it that you're getting double? Those are the questions that they needed to ask themselves. And it just makes me think about how we have to be careful when it comes to people coming to us about investing into things. And one of the first things I think that I would think about asking is, well, first of all, I'm not going to invest with the individual. And me and my husband were talking about this and how, like, during the pandemic, there was a Ponzi scheme going on where people were literally calling me all the time saying, like, hey, you should put, if you put in 200 into this account or this pool, you'll get whatever return. And I'm like, I'm not investing with individuals. This is a Ponzi scheme. And I didn't want to be rude, and I never said, I was just like, oh, I have to talk to my husband, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, you have to be careful. And I think in today's age, there's so much fraud. There's so much fraud. There's so many ways that people are trying to manipulate and steal your money. Like, even earlier today, my husband is a photographer and videographer, and he had someone message him about doing some work, but they were like, oh, give me your name and address, and it didn't make any sense. It sounded very fishy. They were asking for a weird way to get to send their payment. And it's just things like that you just have to look out for. And at the end of the day, with this Madoff situation, it just made me think about how the clients, or victims I should say, they were trying to get quick money. They were trying to really, they were also greedy, and they were also trying to build this huge lump sum of money that they had. They wanted to build it very quickly. So they knew that it's not possible to get these type of returns year over year over year over year. And that's something that people need to know and they need to think about. So when you, even for me, because I have been like, oh my God, I'm constantly like losing with my 401k right now, but it did finally go back up. And that's something that we have to understand and be educated on and knowledgeable about. When you're investing, it's going to fluctuate. It's going to go up and down. So why they weren't asking themselves that, I don't know. To kind of get back more into the docuseries, because I don't want to give it all away, but essentially he obviously wasn't the only person a part of this big scheme. He had a lot of the computer programmers that who were printing the statements, who were able to, because throughout the course of the years they did get audited, but they always found a way to scheme up and create these fake documents, and was able to give to the auditors to get out of possibly being exposed. But ultimately the way that he became exposed is when 2008 came, and it was the whole real estate crisis. All of these clients, they wanted to pull their money out of the stock market because things kept going down, and he didn't have it. He didn't have the money to give them. So that's ultimately how he got caught. And it just to kind of go back to kind of summing it up, it just makes me think about how we all want to make more money. We all want to invest, but investing is a slow process. It's not something that happens quickly, and I think that's something that we have to remember and to think about. And there's no quick fix. There's no quick way, in my opinion, to make money. It's kind of a slow and steady process. It makes, here all the time I see time and harvest, and I think that's what it is when it comes to progressing and getting to a certain point. It takes time. You gotta put in the work, and then it takes time, and it just doesn't happen overnight. And that's something that a lot of the clients or victims fell into. And with Bernie overall, he grew up in a situation where he saw his father struggle, and he never wanted to be in that situation. And then it came to a point for him where it was just this overwhelming greed. And it makes me think about how I never want to be in a situation where I want money, even though I love talking about finance. My ultimate goal is freedom. It's not necessarily to become a billionaire. It's just to have enough money to where I can get up and do what I want to do. And that's something that I mentioned in my last video. And I think that that's what's more important than, it's not about being able to get every luxury item or things of that nature. To me, the most important thing is freedom. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that doesn't necessarily mean that freedom comes with getting like $1 billion free. Because let's face it, there's people who do have all this money and then they commit suicide. And that was another thing that happened in the docuseries, where once it all came about, once a lot of these people saw that they had literally lost all their money. They mentioned one person that 10 or 11 days after Bernie was arrested, he committed suicide. One Bernie's sons both end up dying young, in their 40s. Just a very sad story, very, very sad. And it's just honestly, it's just a really great reminder of why money is considered a root of all evil, and why you need to think about money differently and not think about it in a sense of keeping up with the Joneses or the greed, you know. So I think that's pretty much all I got on it. I would definitely say that I really I enjoy watching the series, and I would recommend watching it, even though I gave some of it away. But there's so much detail into it that I can talk about all day. But I'm going to wash my hair. Again, I mentioned I'm going to use a Shea Moisture Strong Styling Gel, and then I will see you guys next time. So I wanted to come back on really quick because I realize I'm always detangling my hair and don't show it when it's done. So as I mentioned, I was going to use the Shea Moisture Stronghold Styling Gel, which actually does not have a strong hold. It feels soft, but it does feel, you know, that it does have a hold. So I think it's okay. I like it so far. Would I purchase it again? Probably not, just because I don't think it's something that I will be able to find quickly. So I like things that I can be able to pick up quickly. So I just wanted to come back on and show that. And then I wanted to add one other disclaimer about the whole Madoff situation that I think was really key as well on how he was exposed to the fraud. So there was another investment firm that noticed that Madoff was getting these consistent returns, and so there was a particular analyst whose boss was like, hey, I need you to research how Madoff's firm is getting these returns. And so the person did their research, and within like 5 minutes he knew that it was fraud. And so as time went on, he reported it to the SEC 5 times, in which they never, I won't say they never, because they did do audits, but nothing never came to fruition with him going to the SEC and telling them what he was finding and telling them that these returns are impossible. So I just wanted to point out that that was like a really key component on how he also got exposed, along with the whole real estate crisis. But that was it. I just wanted to add that, and then just come back and show the final results of my hair. And I will see you in the next video.